Good morning. Today we have with us Judy DuRubio of Academy Mortgage. Welcome to Easy Living on the North Shore, Judy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Moira. It's a great day in the market.
Yeah. So we invited Judy to talk today to maybe take out the mystery of getting a mortgage and maybe share with us some of the current conditions of the housing market and how it relates to mortgages for your typical buyer and what they can do to kind of navigate through the whole process.
That's a great question, Moira. We try to take the mystery out of mortgage by just having an experienced loan officer. We don't need mortgage to be a full-time job for you when you apply for one. We have lots of tools to help you. We have an online app, which I understand from the users is very simple, very user-friendly. We can do that in a multitude of ways. We can email it, we can text it. I can give you a paper application if you like paper. I can take the application on the phone. Sometimes I like to preview that with a client on the phone. In other words, if somebody calls me and wants to talk about a mortgage, that's exactly what I do. I talk. They'll have their own individual way of how they want to handle it.
Mhm.
I always like to take some of that mystery out with a conversation first. And the first thing you can do is get in touch with a loan officer that has experience. Yes, technology is key, but really in this industry, experience really does count. I've seen a lot of things in my over 25 years in the industry. I have a lot to share, and I'm happy to share that with you.
That's awesome. So tell us what viewers can do to actually prepare for a mortgage or to what sorts of things would they have to compile before they
Well,
talk?
Sure. I find that lots of times the real estate agent will be the one to really direct the buyer to a loan officer.
Mhm.
They give out one or two names or three names. Sometimes the agent will even match the loan officer to the borrower. And my tagline is sometimes you just need a woman's touch. I work a lot with first-time home buyers and try to settle them down. They'll need a multitude of documentation, and documentation you have to understand is what I call a moving target. A W-2 is not a moving target. We have 2020 W-2s, we have 2019 W-2s, which usually are required. Pay stubs, moving targets. They always have to be updated. Bank statements, moving targets. So you need to be prepared to give us information and explanations. And you need to understand that we don't ask for things we don't need. We have so much paperwork in our lives that we ask for what we need. But I always like to preface it with moving targets and be prepared.
Mhm.
We also ask them not to buy things, make big purchases, make large deposits of cash. We're like the FBI. We are detectives.
And how has it changed with COVID? Is a lot more online now? You know,
Well,
with the
that's
going
where,
back and forth of information.
yes and no. Really, I have not met with clients eye to eye for probably the last 3 to 5 years. That whole method is gone away. It changes with demographics.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything can be uploaded to secure websites
Hmm.
and in password protected, if you will. We still do a lot of fax because that is one of the safest ways to get information to us. We find now that even W-2s do not have social security numbers on them, so they're okay to,
Okay. Yeah.
and today the consumer is so savvy, it makes my
Right.
job easier. They can
Right.
bank
Yeah.
statements right from their laptops or their cell phones, if you will. I mean, they can actually make application on a cell phone.
Hmm.
QR codes to be able to do that.
Hmm. Now, what's the difference between? I'm just realizing I should change our view here, so you're not so much on the. It's not like you're on the stand here.
Right.
What's the difference between going to a lender or at a bank or going to a mortgage company? I've always wondered that.
Okay. So banks typically sell to one market, Fannie Mae.
Hmm.
Lenders such as myself, or mortgage bankers, if you will, we sell mostly to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And those are the agencies that supply the conventional mortgage monies. There are little nuances that are different between Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and everything is done by automation. There's not a human touch to the yes or the no or the maybe. We go in, we put in the information, and our job is to determine the integrity of the information that we put in. So if we put in that you make $60,000, I've already seen a pay stub to confirm that. I've seen W-2s to see that you've made that kind of money in the last 2 years. A bank, their loan offices typically are only registered through the NMLS, which stands for the National Mortgage Licensing System. A mortgage banker such as myself is licensed. We had to go through rigorous testing, and that started in 2008. I was first generation of that. The testing is rigorous. We have to do annual CEUs, if you will, to make our license. If you work for a bank, you simply register. There may be a time in the future that even bankers will need to be licensed, but mortgage lenders need to be licensed. It is there's a consumer site that you can check out any loan officer you want. In selecting your loan officer, I suggest you do that. I also suggest that you check their LinkedIn profile, their reviews on Google or Zillow, if you will. There's lots of ways to find out the experience and integrity of the loan officer you select.
Well, that's interesting. And how have you seen things change over the years? You were talking about 2008. When things were not as great as they are now, and they added new restrictions and updated. Wanted to make sure that, and even with the real estate agents, I mean, the testing that we have to go through now is actually much stricter than it had been in previous years.
In 2008, a lot of things went away and never came back, which is a good thing. So silent second mortgages, no doc type loans. They have loosened up slightly on it, but for the most part, most of those things were put in place to really kind of clean up the lending environment. And it has. The integrity of today's loan offices is really upstanding. I'll use that word. So if you're a licensed loan officer, you again aspire to integrity. And that's the main things that I hold myself responsible for. You just can't risk your license.
Right. Well, and I'm sure when you were saying that you have like a women's touch, I'm sure it's nice to have someone that you're comfortable with too, because really when you're shelling out all of these documents about your life, it's almost like when you're going through the security at the airport and they ask to like go through your luggage, it's a little bit like, you know what I mean?
It's invasive.
Like, it's invasive. Thank you. I another friend of mine does mortgages, and I was mentioning to her that I often go to Starbucks, and she was like, "Moira, that's a waste of money. Why are you doing that? Things like that add up." And I was like, "What's it to you?" But and I realized that she's really reviewing people's expenses and putting things on a chart, and it's pretty detailed, right? Like all the information and gathering.
It's scary.
Yeah,
it's scary, and we go through bank statements. We can see everything. We can see how many times you go to Dunkin' Donuts, how many times you go to Starbucks. We can see what you're doing with, I'll use the word residual cash. And when people tell me they can't save any money, I say, well, do you know you spend $200 a month at Dunkin' Donuts? And they're like, how do you know that? Your bank statement.
But the drive-through was calling my name. I couldn't help it.
It's embarrassing. I can see what you spend at the liquor store. I mean, think about it. It's, I say, stop swiping.
I know. Yeah, it's totally true. Isn't that so funny? Now, what would you say if someone had to ask you your specialty then? What would you specialize in?
I love first-time home buyers because I have the patience. I was a teacher in a past life, so I know how it is to not understand. And I also know how people learn in a multitude of ways. There's only one way. There's not one way of learning. There's many ways of learning. And I explain things. I'm a talker.
Yeah.
So much easier to talk than to put it in an email, which is cold. It's like,
Right.
at some
Right.
point you need to talk. It's the information is just so invasive. I mean, I had to ask someone, they didn't put on their application if they were married or unmarried.
Mhm.
And I had to ask, I'm like, I have to ask you this question. Are you married? She's like, yes. I'm like, okay. But her name on her license didn't match the name on the application.
Mhm. Wow.
We have to explain those things
Mhm.
about invasive.
So what would you say would be a couple of recommendations that you would say then to first-time home buyers? If they're looking for the market, because
Patience,
the market's so tight now. I mean, it could take 6 months, right, to find a house right now, but
patience, and the quality of the pre-approval. So a lot of times buyers work with companies that are not local. And especially here in New England, in the Northeast, in Essex County, if you will, there are so many good banks and mortgage companies. You don't need to go outside the loop. Agents, listing agents will, and buyer agents will feel much more comfortable with a pre-approval that comes from a loan officer they know. My agents know. They get a pre-approval from Judy DuRubio. It's going to fly.
mhm, right. Have you seen things
That's
fall apart like
when
that? And yeah, that's
that's
actually
when experience counts.
yes, it does, right? Yeah. So you've got you cross the T's and dot the I's, everything you've got everything going on. You can tell when they
Yeah,
get
I'll
Dunkin'
just-
Donuts.
I can tell. And if the listing agent doesn't know me and we're presenting an offer and it might be 3% down, might be 5% down, I'll call that listing agent and introduce myself. And they are so grateful for that. They're like, Judy, thank you so much. I just had an offer approved in Drake from a young man that grew up in Hamilton. And neither of the agents knew me, buyer agent, seller agent, called them both, feel comfortable with this pre-approval. These are great kids. They have a great offer. They really want this house. And their offer was not the best, and they got it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And
Agents,
because
both
of their
agents,
strong
exactly.
pre-approval.
And they had not heard of me, and nor had they heard of Academy Mortgage. And you know how you can tell if people look up your profile on LinkedIn?
Oh yes, my son taught me that.
Yep. So I can tell they go right into my LinkedIn profile. So
Mm,
it's really important as a buyer agent, real estate agent, any agent, loan officer to have a really nice LinkedIn profile. Not Facebook so much, but LinkedIn. And I can tell, oh, they looked at me.
that is
And
so funny.
why should I do business with you?
Right. And do you share information like that on LinkedIn? I mean, do you share like
Yeah.
hard to share? You can't share everything I know with your
You
industry.
can't, well, we share the reviews. So our
Okay.
reviews are there. So you can see the reviews.
Mhm.
Um, and, certainly having withstood 25 years plus in this business, there's not much I haven't seen, but I do learn every day.
Oh my gosh, that's great. All right, so people can look you up on LinkedIn, and then also underneath this little interview, I can put your email and your phone number.
That'd be terrific.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really, really interesting. And, again, I think it's just nice to have a good resource in this competitive housing market and someone you can trust and who has, as you were saying, the experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Have a good day.
You too, Maura.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.